Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I am your host, Clay, and with me, finally, after what feels like an eternity, Katie is back. I'm so glad you're here. I went on too many solo rants. It was it was nice to make me feel like how I used to be when I first started podcasting by myself. But also, Katie, you are like the lore knowledge like goddess in this podcast. It was so hard to remember books, characters, lore. It was horrible. So I'm so glad you're back.
I'm super glad to be back. No, it's only been 9 weeks, Clay. You survived. Congratulations.
I mean, it's only been 9 weeks for me, but it's been like 10 months for you. Like I'm glad the baby's okay.
Yep.
We've been talking, the entire time you were gone though. We were texting each other for the book, for the show, like everything. Doctor Who, like we have been talking for the entire 9 weeks.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm super excited that you are back. Surprisingly, there hasn't been, like, ever since the Acolyte started, news has not been booming for Star Wars. There's been
Correct.
like some random things here and there. I think the biggest thing recently was the uh, Star Wars Outlaws video game stuff was coming out
Yep.
a while ago. And there's just been a lot of hit pieces from the show that we are gonna be ready to talk about here tonight, The Acolyte. So, real quick, everything up to this point, Katie, because right now I am pretty sure, looking back at our uh, Star Wars Alliance chat, there is no news, right? It is all just stuff that is from
No.
the show and uh random Easter egg stuff and stuff from the show. There's really no news to talk about. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Now, I used to be the news guru sending everything in the chat. Now I'm like, I don't know what's going on the interwebs. So if we miss something, y'all just let us know. We'll talk about it next week, I promise.
Yeah, like looking there was a Lego set from Ahsoka that is
Oh,
now
yeah.
officially out there. I don't know if pre-orders are available. Uh the set looks great, by the way. So if you guys are Lego collectors, it is a set that you must have. But other than that, no news. Katie, I need to know. Now, again, we've talked rumors, we've talked theories, but I haven't really gotten to hear your opinion. Episodes 1 through 5. How we feeling?
Yes.
What do you think? Like, give it all to me.
I definitely was of the opinion things were moving super slow. I don't typically enjoy a mystery that I can't binge all at once. Maybe that's the book reader in me,
Uh-huh.
where it's like I have the capability to finish this in my hand. I've never been like a huge mystery show person. The biggest thing I probably did was like Benedict Cumberbatch's Sherlock show, but those were mysteries that began and ended in the same episode. So it's like that stuff I do, like mystery movies, huzzah, but like a mystery TV show, it's a struggle for me to get into. So it definitely started off slow, but like last episode was a bomb, in a good way. And then this week's episode, oh my gosh, I loved this episode so much. So like I think we're finally hitting my jam. I love all the like what the characters are doing. I love Lee Jung Jae as Soul. He's amazing, like phenomenal. Like dude is
I'm
killing
scared for Soul.
it. You're scared for Soul. I am too, honestly. Especially like seeing like him like after today's episode. Yeah, I'm scared.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but I will also say, well, we'll just leave that all for the conversation for episode
Yes,
6.
I will say this. I did not think in last week's episode, and I told you this, I did not like Kamir as the stranger. As of last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think this week's combined with the interview that Maggie Lovett did for Collider with Leslie Headland, like I'm digging this now.
I think going with the flow, you know, I a little bit of me still wants to say that he is a proclaimed Sith,
yes,
rather than like a for sure like Sith Lord. We still have after today, we still have 2 episodes, and of course, it was revealed, I think, sometime this week, if not today, that Headland does already have season 2 mapped out. Whether that actually happens, we will have to wait and see. Now, as far as Chimere as the stranger, me, you, and Snell have been having this conversation about how it did feel way too obvious. And I think it's on the nose for a reason. Because I think there will be that last minute like zinger for the show to be like, oh shit, type of thing. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Now, I'm kind of in the same mindset as Adrian. Again, want to thank Adrian and Georgie for coming onto the show for the last few weeks to review the show of Acolyte. But I'm in the same mindset as Adrian, where we have been burned way too many times with other Star Wars shows with high expectations. I think it's time to like settle. We are in new territory that we've never really explored before, as far as the timeline goes. So there can be expectations just for like the chaos and fun of it, but at the same time, realistically, I think I'm just kind of like, hey, we'll just see what happens. So let's jump into episode 6. This is titled Teach and Corrupt.
Yeah, and I like that they went back to the separate titles for like each sister in this vein. Like you saw like the same title for the past, I think it was 2 episodes or 3 episodes because the flashback. And so like showing that they've been separated again and now you're getting 2 sides to one story again, I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I really dig that. We, like you said, are getting 2 sides of the same story here. Osha is with Chimere, and May is with Master Soul. So, which one do you want to talk over first? Because I think these 2 we can just kind of go by them really quickly. So, which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about May and Soul first because like we got to talk about horny on May and Star Wars Twitter at the end. So y'all know that's my favorite time on Star Wars Twitter.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about May. May and Master Soul are leaving the planet. Of course, Basil is still there, kind of, you know, checking May out as far as like he's on to something. There's clearly something wrong here, and we do see that go into fruition. But there was a big commotion last episode, of course, from very silly people on Twitter, but having the insight of how is Master Soul not gonna realize that this is not OSHA? Like, what? Like, how is that even possible? He's a Master Jedi. How could he not figure it out? Did you like how they went about it? Now, again, it wasn't so abrupt. There was some time between them getting onto the ship and then, things finally hitting the fan and him realizing. Uh I think it was very steadily paced.
Yeah, I think so. And I liked what somebody said on Twitter, that they need like an animated short story from Basil's perspective, and like how he like points out to Soul like, hey, this isn't OSHA, kind of thing, like in the background, because you see him behind Soul when
Soul, yeah.
Soul stuns her and everything. But I think Amanda and Lee played this scene, well, the whole episode really well, and just building that tension. I mean, there's a whole 30 seconds where Lee doesn't say a single thing, and he just sits there and just like so frustrated, and you can see all this emotion on his face from like the battle, losing his apprentice, losing his team, and then like what's going on. Like, he's gonna have to be honest. We see like an Elzar man kind of moment where he like talks to Vernestra, or he's trying to talk to Vernestra, and then realizes, okay, I've got to be honest. Like, yeah. But also, where does he go at the end of the episode? Because like he leaves as the rescue team gets there.
I think they are going back to their home planet,
Brindock. Yeah.
Yes. I think he's going to take her there to tell her what exactly happened. I really dug this dynamic here because, of course, it is Amandla playing both May and OSHA. She has to put on two personas, and it's so crazy because she's having to put on a persona of the other character that she's playing. So it's tricky. I was wondering if she was going to try to do something with her voice to kind of, because May doesn't know her sister and how she acts outside of the 16 years that it was missing, right? So I was really curious on how that was all going to go down, but she played it very cool. I did enjoy the small moment with her and Pip, squirting the oil in her face, and him realizing like, hey, this is not, who it is.
Yeah.
Clearly Basil told Pip something. But everybody always talks about the emotion that Soul is putting out there into the show, and I dig it. There was so many people joking about how Lee is holding this entire show on his shoulders. I don't think he is, but man, he is pulling the weight. He is pulling something like a lot of that weight, and I dig it. I love his emotion for this, because again, it goes. This is the end of the High Republic era. We have talked immensely about how in the novels we have enjoyed the amount of emotion that these Jedi are sharing, are expressing, because we don't get that in the prequels. We don't get that a whole lot as far as like what the Jedi code is supposed to be. They're very strict and everything else. So seeing Master Soul like this, it's good as far as television, but kind of scary when you see it all unfold, because he starts to have this kind of like dark sense around him when he's talking to May. He's like, oh, and you're gonna listen. And like his whole tone changes. He is no longer that loving master that like embraced May when he thought that it was Osha. Thank you for saving us. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be crazy, and I am very curious. I want to bring something up to you, but it has to do with Master Soul and Chimere. There has been a lot of people throwing out this. They're saying, oh, it's giving these vibes. I had to do a little bit of searching, and I did find out that when I was in elementary school, I actually did own one of these books, but spoilers for almost 20-year-old book, I guess. There was I want to say trilogy, but I think there was actually 4 books of a Legends story where Qui-Gon Jinn's first apprentice, first Padawan, went to the dark side.
I'm not entirely certain. The Legends prequel era is something that I'm not super familiar with. I'm definitely more like post Return of the Jedi for that. So I don't know.
So it is, from looking back at this again, this was from,
because I read up to Rogue Planet, which was Obi-Wan and Anakin. So I don't know what story that would be.
This is, if I'm looking correctly, Xanatos. It is the Jedi Apprentice novels.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read those.
The
second Padawan of Qui-Gon Jinn.
Second Padawan, that's what it was. Second Padawan. A lot of people are throwing this reference out. Again, I have no idea what this means because I have not read them. But people were just kind of giving the lowdown of his. It is exactly what we said. His second apprentice goes to the dark side, and there's a mission to, either apprehend him or see what's going on or whatever. And people are relating this to the show of Acolyte because people are assuming that Chimere was once a Padawan of Soul. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case because of what he says in this episode.
Yeah, a lot of people today were assuming Vernestra's apprentice.
I am really curious at this.
Because if you look at the scar on his back, a lot of people take it to be a whip mark on his back.
I kind of got the same sense as well. Because he says when I think it was Osha said, "Oh, you talk like you were once a Jedi." He says, "Oh, I was." And she's like, "Oh, well, I've never heard of you." Or he says, "I was a long time ago." And she's like, "Oh, well, I haven't heard anything of you." And he says, "Oh, it was a long time ago."
Yep.
So what kind of fountain of youth is he drinking from, for one?
The Palpatine fountain of youth.
Yeah.
But he could. A lot of people are theorizing that he could potentially take on the Darth Tenebris, or they've rekindled Plagueis, because Plagueis has never been identified as a specific species in canon. So kind of taking on one of those two personas, which both did research into how to extend life.
Yeah.
So
how would you feel as somebody who is, as far as I personally know, the most knowledgeable in Star Wars, how would you feel if by the end of the series, not necessarily this season, but if by the end of this series we find out that Chimere is Plagueis?
That wouldn't bug me. I think there has to be some connection in here, whether Chimere ends up dead at the hands of Plagueis, or Tenebris or whoever. Um, kind of like we talked about last week, like the Pretender. And so he could be the start of the Knights of Ren, but he could also be struck down because he's claiming the name Sith to all these Jedi, but he's not a Sith. And so he's endangering the Sith from that perspective. But if he was Plagueis, it really wouldn't bug me.
It wouldn't bug me because, again, I haven't read too much about Plagueis. The only thing that I know about Plagueis is the fact that he was the master to Palpatine. Like, that's all I literally know. I haven't read anything past that.
The biggest, and there is a Darth Plagueis audiobook, so if you wanted to listen to it, it's a hefty read. It was,
I believe, wasn't it one of the reprints last year? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So there is an Essential Legends Collection edition. I don't think I have that one. I know I have the mass market, which is what I read. I don't know if I did a review on it for Patreon or not. I'm not sure. But I was reading it for Patreon and then I may have stopped. But anyways, so the biggest thing is that he's a Mun in Legends. So he gets to Coruscant and has some pull on Coruscant because he's a member of the banking clan. And that's how he comes to meet Palpatine. Is Palpatine, I think, was a member of like the Junior Corps. Wasn't a senator yet, but that's how he makes friends with Palpatine and he becomes his apprentice and everything. So he is a Mun in Legends, but you could easily manipulate that around because he's not been declared as anything in canon, like I said. So
that because the Plagueis novel is Legends. So anything else with Soul and May?
It's just a lot of tension building in this. I don't know how I feel about this. Is my only question with how this episode or last episode turned. Was I don't know how I feel about Soul confessing his crimes to May versus Osha. I feel like it would hit harder if he was confessing and telling the story of what truly happened on Brindok to Osha versus May because of the relationship.
I am torn between the two because you are right, but I also think that it hits just as hard with May because May for her entire life has seen the Jedi in this very negative light due to the relationship that she had with her family, with her cult. And of course, the Jedi, them being who they are, always see these things as, hey, what we do is right. There is no wrong in our actions, da-da-da-da. And a Jedi coming to terms with that and, saying, hey, what we did was wrong, possibly. We don't know yet. I think that hits hard with May anyway, because it's like, hey, like, you saw this in us. We, just brushed it off our shoulders because we're all high and mighty. And now we're here to confess to you, yes, you were right the entire time.
Yeah, I could see that. I could. I don't know. We'll see how I feel about it after next week's episode. I do hope we get like a narrator perspective and not just like a full flashback episode. Yeah. Like I want
explanation.
I want Soul to tell the story with highlights from flashbacks. So let's talk about Vernestra really quickly, and then we can get to Chimere and Osha. So Vernestra, Soul and does reach out to Coruscant, but he has to reset the transceiver. And by the time the transceiver is reset, he decides, no, I don't want to talk to Coruscant at all. May does try to call for help once she realizes that the Soul knows who she is, but that doesn't succeed either. So Vernestra decides to lead a rescue team out to Kofar. And in doing so, they investigate kind of what happened on the ground. And an apprentice, a Padawan that's with her, I think his name was Mog, basically kind of tells a story of, oh, well, Soul reached out to us. Soul's not here. Clearly, Soul went dark.
How do you feel about this very quick accusation?
I mean, it makes sense, though, don't you think? Because Vernestra kind of takes it and goes, okay, like, if that's what you want to think, like, we'll go with that. Until Soul can kind of bring himself back to the light.
I mean, she does say, like, oh, that was a very, quick accusation. What, like, how do you, like, she does ask him, like, what do you see, in the sense of, like, here's all the damage. What do you think happened? I want to know if Soul has a history with, like, anger, to where that kind of accusation is like, hey, we promised we wouldn't bring that up, but, like, yeah, kind of, type of thing.
Well, because we see her with the senator right at the beginning, who's like, hey, we're going to be conducting an audit of the Jedi Order. I think I watched this episode like 3:30 a.m. this morning, y'all. So
yeah, it's I did rewatch it. I wanted to know if that scene was hiding any type of, like, Easter eggs or anything. It's honestly just here to remind the viewers that in this time, the Order is getting more and more politicized.
Yeah. So so she already knows that the Jedi is kind of coming under scrutiny because of that audit that's coming up. So to me, it's like she has to justify whatever it can possibly be, because she can't think of, oh, well, we had, like, there's another order out there, like, there's a Sith out there on the loose.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something that they can possibly reconcile with the Senate, because then it's like the Jedi have no control over the Force like they claim to be in this whole thing. Because, I mean, you see that with the first flashback episode 3, where the Jedi come in and they're like, you can't be training kids on how to use the Force. That's our job. And so they can't let it get out that there's potentially somebody else involved. So the easiest answer is one of the Jedi turned dark and went crazy.
Okay. I can now see, with that logic, I was like, okay, like, I can see that.
She has to do what she thinks is best for the entire order.
Yeah. I hope we get more scenes with Vernestra. Again, there's only 2 episodes. There is no promise that we will get more scenes with Vernestra. But to see the only lightsaber scene with her was literally already shown in the trailer.
Yeah.
I was like, don't feel awesome about that. Like, just because I wanted to see the whip in action more so than that was just kind of like, oh, look what I can do type of thing.
I saw somebody literally like go, oh, so you used it as a fly swatter. That's all that scene was.
Yeah. Like it again, it kind of shows you how powerful she is. She can sense it, whatever. Yeah, that's cool. But, like, it was so quick. And the retraction of the lightsaber as well. The edit wasn't great, so you didn't really get to see it all that well. So I want to see more of it. Again,
I don't know.
I think we need a season 2 if like, I think that literally has to happen in order to see more of Vernestra's lightsaber.
For sure. What did you think? So, on the Star Wars Gallery trivia, so on the Star Wars website, you can go to the gallery and it has trivia for the episode. And so her ship that they take off with is actually named the Kantaros, which is after her first Padawan, Imri Kantaros. What did you think about that?
I think this is awesome. More so because that was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And she is still naming her ship after her first Padawan. Like, that's like, that just like kind of warms my heart. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
so nice.
And it's not mentioned in the episode itself, but it was just kind of cool to see in that regard.
I think that is very, very cool.
The other High Republic reference that is made is actually by Mog, because Vernestra shows up in mission attire, and Mog goes, "Master, you don't like going into hyperspace. You get nauseous." And she says, "I don't get sick. I just don't like the feeling." What did you think about this?
This is the one that I didn't like. Now,
really?
Yes. Because, spoilers for the High Republic novels, if anybody is interested. The way that the books have been relating her, quote-unquote, illness, nauseous, anxiety through hyperspace is through her connection with the Force and with this mystery that is going about in the High Republic novels. In the most recent novel, we know that she gets a little bit more of that mystery. And this is maybe just me assuming, as a reader, I'm seeing all of this and I'm like, okay, so when she unveils the mystery, the visions will go away, the nausea will go away, the anxiety will go away. So, like, having it here, it kind of felt like Headland like got this one piece from like one of the random books and it's like, oh, we'll just throw that into the show. Like, it may be something that is actually concluded in the books, like at the end of phase 3. We don't know. Like, and this is again just me assuming, but it can possibly be something that is concluded, and then 100 years later, there's just a reference to like, oh, you still get sick on hyperspace trips. You know,
I guess I never assumed that once the High Republic books ended, that her nausea would end, because when I want to say it's the first book, it's not Mission to Disaster. Is it Mission to Disaster? I can't ever remember. I get them
Test of Courage.
Test of Courage. Thank you. Test of Courage. She talks about how she, or maybe it was Out of Shadows. I don't remember. It's one of the first phase 1 books. She talks about how with Stellan, she was always sick with hyperspace, but then like Stellan kind of helped her figure out that the Force was trying to tell her something on those trips, and that he wanted her to kind of endeavor to figure out more. That's why she always hated flying and everything, even if she was never going to hyperspace with like the vectors and everything.
Yeah.
So because I think she like grew up with it, quote, I guess I never thought like, oh, it would end at some point. Like,
that's true.
It's kind of like migraine disorder. Like, you don't ever get over it. You just learn to live with it, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I get that now. Okay. With that perspective, and I mean, honestly, I need to reread phase 1 from the very beginning. It has been, 3 years since we've almost 4 since we started reading those. But yeah, the one thing that was very ominous and interesting is, Vernestra's being, the master and like, oh, trying to teach this Jedi something, like, oh, observe what you see and tell me what happened. And she looks very concerned. Of course,
Yeah.
there are 6 to 7 Jedi just all dead in front of her, so she's gonna be concerned. But it looks like there's something more. And I did not think about it, but now that you've put it into my brain that Chimere could possibly be an old apprentice of Vernestra is very interesting. And I think it's very interesting because it takes Vernestra from being just a legacy character into a main plot point.
Yeah, and because you think about it, when Leslie was asked, "Hey, are we going to see anything else High Republic involved?" She said, "No, Vernestra is the main point for season 1, but if we get a season 2, there's a lot more connections that can be made." So you think about it and you go, "Oh, well, you could bring in Burry, you could bring in mentions of Stellan and Avar and Elzar and like all these things because it would be earlier on in the time frame when assuming
Katie, is season 2 gonna be a giant flashback of when Chimere finally falls?
You could go about it that way.
Is it gonna follow the same formula as the High Republic books? It's gonna be present time, then flashback, and then go back to present time.
Hey, George Lucas did it first. Like, let's be real now. George Lucas did it first.
Yes, but we're talking about the High Republic, and that is literally what they did. So I'm just saying, a part of me wouldn't be mad about it. But at the same time, you know me, everybody else knows me. Non-linear storytelling is not my favorite. So,
but think about it this way. What if they did it so you get the flashback and then you can get the sequel quicker because you have different actors in each story, so they don't necessarily have any overlap, and you could have 2 different writers' rooms, and then you could film them very close together. So then you get season 2.
If they go about it that way, yes, 100%. Because I don't know if we've had this discussion, but I've also been seeing it a lot on Twitter and on TikTok lately. The new format of 8 episodes every 2 years is trash. I'm sorry. Yep. We complained about 26 episodes a season. We don't need 26 episodes, but we need more than 8.
Yes.
I think,
and they could be longer than 26 minutes or 30 minutes.
Yes. If you're gonna make me wait 2 years for 8 episodes, every episode needs to be more than an hour. That's just how it needs to be. Sorry.
Sure.
It just is.
Give me 4 or 5 episodes that are an hour 15 apiece.
Yes. It's starting to bug me. It really, really is.
Especially, and now, obviously, this is a Star Wars show, not Bridgerton. But Bridgerton, you want, all of these books are supposed to take place within 10 years of each other. And we're already at 6. And the next season hasn't even been written yet for Bridgerton. So it's going to be another 2 years. So, anyways.
Yikes. Yeah.
Yes, I don't when nobody's a fan of this. Nobody's a fan of this.
It's not fun. But I think that is it for Vernestra.
Yes.
She played a small role, but it still makes you itch your head a little bit and hey, what's going on in that little brain of hers? So let's finally get to talking about what did I think they even have an Oshamir. Now, I want to go ahead and we'll talk about Horny on Main in a second. Because it started a long time ago. The reveal of Chimere ladies, for a month, I heard how y'all would choose the bear. I don't think that's the case anymore. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, you see this dude murking Jedi, stabbing people, snapping necks, and you're like, oh, he's so dreamy. Oh, I can fix him. Oh, I'll come to the dark side. Like, no. There is no more arguments about the bear. Not after this. Sorry. Not gonna happen.
We're not even going to talk about the bear in this case. But like, okay. But like, seriously though, book talk and Bookstagram and Booktube has ruined people. Like Akatar, the evil dark dude, like the dead, like I saw this video. It was, oh my gosh, it was, I can't even remember, but he was like, no, you don't want the evil Fae, dude. Like, what are you gonna do with him? Like, so I'm gonna have to find the video and send it to you because oh my gosh, it was so funny. But like, it's like bad. Like everybody wants the enemies to lovers. Enemies to lovers is like the best, like, seductive storyline.
You said the magic word in the interview with Leslie. She is so enthralled with the word seduced, and she talks about how Anakin was seduced to the dark side, and she likes that idea in a much different way.
Even Jacob says it's seductive.
Well, oh god. Well, that's the thing. How I don't know. Guys, let me just go ahead and say it. He's an attractive guy. He worked out. His biceps are huge. He's great looking. He's great. That is the actor. Now, Kymir is a horrible person.
Yes.
Osha, being the individual that she is, again, from I think almost the first episode up until now, we've seen these moments of like, yes, she is clearly a good person in the sense of what is good and evil, right? There has never really been an act that she has done throughout the entire season that is like, that is what a good person would do. She just hasn't been in that situation. Now, there has also been moments of her having very strong emotion, her getting angry, her getting frustrated. These things that do, from time to time in the Star Wars galaxy, lead you to the dark side. So it is not a surprise if she would go to the dark side, but how is my question, you know?
And that's what Jacob's kind of backing you up too. The thing with Kymir is that he isn't offering anything seductive enough to turn. And I think that's what the episode was kind of leaning into, but also like trying to open her up because she's wearing, and the interview that we'll talk more about that Leslie did with Maggie, she talks a lot about clothing choices and everything, but she goes specifically into Osha wearing gray and Kymir wearing the beige, the white clothes in this kind of instance, like, oh, he was wearing dark clothes in this, but now he's trying to lure her in, and she's wearing this gray that she says, I don't know what to do here, like at all. And so Kymir's trying to be a little more open than he was with May in this instance. Headland says, it's so clear what's going on. So anybody that's picking up on it, congrats, awesome. But again, the dynamics had to be what they are after what he did in episode 5. He can't seem like an alpha male intimidating. We know he's capable of that from 5, but that cannot be his dynamic with her. It wouldn't make sense. We have to see this other side of him, and we have to see specifically the way he is with her. He never let May see his face, and he let her her, Osha in this case, see him naked. You know what I mean? The character design was very, very intentional. So
Jacob
it's a
says,
lot of that.
Jacob says she can't bring back her parents. She knows that her sister is safe and alive with the Jedi, so why turn? What goes into the conversation of what Chimera and Osha had of, you know, why did the Jedi throw you away? It's this sense of he is giving her a compliment sandwich. I don't know if anybody's heard of the term of the compliment sandwich, but it's a good compliment, then a bad compliment, then a good compliment again, or vice versa. And with her, he tells her like how powerful she is with the Force and like all of these different things. But he's also telling her like, hey, they threw you away. Why would you even call yourself a Jedi? Why do you align with them? They're not what you need. They're not what you want. And it's these little things. She is so vulnerable at this moment. You're right. She can't bring her parents back. Yes, May is safe.
But she doesn't know May is safe. She knows May took her clothes, and so assumingly went off with Soul.
Yeah.
So she doesn't know that.
But right now, she is also in survival mode. So when you're in this fight or flight, it is also in the sense of like, hey, are you going to give into the dark side? Because he pinned him to the wall with his lightsaber. She got angry enough to ignite that lightsaber when she herself told Soul to stop in the middle of their fight, to not kill him. So there is still something there. There is something there that is nagging at her mind, whether that is the idea of that she wasn't good enough as a Jedi or whatnot. Jacob also says, Palpatine offered to help save Padme and to give him power to stop death. He preyed on his biggest insecurities with promises. And I think we will eventually get to something like that. Right now, like Katie said, and like Leslie is saying, he is being open and soft and just like, oh, there's the ship. If you want to leave, you can leave, or you can wait until nightfall and then leave. Oh, but if you want something to eat, I have some food here. Hey, look, this is Cortosis, like showing her all of his vulnerabilities himself. Yeah. And like, hey, if you want to strike, it is basically an invitation. Hey, if you want to strike me down, here's a moment to do so. But I think she does have a bit of curiosity.
Yeah, and she's trying, and Headland says this in the interview too. She talks about how Osha's just very extremely in denial at her own anger at the Jedi for kind of leaving her behind and not being willing to like take her forward, and at Soul for kind of what happened with her sister, but also still mad at May and everything. But she's in denial because she feels like with what the Jedi told her, she's not allowed to be angry. And Chimera opens that door for her and is like, I feel all these emotions. And like going down the list and like even into desire kind of thing. So like, what can you say to that kind of thing? Sorry, scroll. She says, feel it. So she's in extreme denial about that because she feels like she's not allowed to be angry. She's in an enormous amount of pain over her sister and their history. She also feels like she's not allowed to feel that. So someone coming in and saying, actually feeling all those things is not only okay, but actually could restore your spiritual foundation is almost too much. Headland says, I don't think that's manipulation. I think he's telling her the truth.
Yeah.
And I think offering up the truth is something that Chimera is like the best thing possible that he can do in this case. And Jacob says the stakes need to be much higher to turn to the dark side. I don't think he's opening up, like he's not specifically saying this is the dark side. He's saying there's another way than just you have to excise all emotion and all feeling from your person in order to use the Force. He specifically says, did the Jedi tell you that once you left, you couldn't use the Force anymore. Like, he specifically says that, and he's trying to show her that you don't have to stick with, hey, you must be a robot in order to do
like
this.
he says that you don't have to be in this bubble that the Jedi want you to be in. And I think as far as like the stakes needing to be higher in just that phrasing, I think that the stakes are subjective to Osha in the sense of what exactly she is struggling with. These ideas of her hating the Jedi right now or being angry at the Jedi, like that is enough. Like she has her life has been spread through, like, you know, losing her parents, losing her sister, losing the chance to be a Jedi when that's all she wanted as a kid, you know, and now being thrown into this mess all over again. Like, she is being pulled in every direction right now. So, with, you know, we said it's not manipulation, it's truth, but, you know, a little manipulation, she can go that route. He also says, I guess at this point, the Jedi are beginning to become stagnant. And once episode 1 rolls around, they'll be completely blind to the rise of the Sith. And that's what me and Adrian were talking about with the idea of, does Palpatine need to be somewhere in this show, you know, twiddling his thumbs, you know, ha ha ha, you know, scheming in the background? We know as of right now that there are a small amount of individuals that know about May and the possibility of a master to May. Yeah. The only one that has seen that is Osha and Soul, because everybody else is dead. There's only 2 episodes left. I think this is one of those shows that not everybody lives in this sense. Clearly in the sense of this other team that has gone to that planet, seen all the dead bodies. They have now pointed the finger at Soul. There is no inkling of Sith. You know? Even when that first conversation went about with the smaller council or whatever you want to call them, they said, you know, another Jedi is what they said.
They said another dark Jedi.
Yeah.
And like, you kind of think about it, like they're already in this case blind to a dark side user. Like I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking last week, like, how did these 8 Jedi, what, like a couple of them masters, not sense Chimere until he was literally right behind them? And I mean, you think about it, and the High Council themselves were with Palpatine, like almost probably daily during like the Clone Wars, and couldn't sense him. Like, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse as time goes on. So
yeah. Jacob says, I'm bothered by the fact that the High Council isn't picking up anything, even with the senator asking for an investigation into the Jedi. Again, this is the moment that we were talking about as far as like, this is a reminder to the audience, hey, the Jedi are being more and more politicized. It's not necessarily an investigation as much as it is, Katie said, an audit. This is just a little thing like, hey, you're at Coruscant here among the senators and everything else. This is just the way that we
budget,
do things.
Like, you want a budget? Here's what you have to do to get your budget. Like, yeah. That's it, pretty much.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also going into the fact that what Katie said, like, this is just, we know that in the High Republic books, there is not so strict of a council. we are seeing in real time as we are reading these books why the council turns into the council that they are in the prequels.
Yep.
Like everything with the Nihil and all of that, like that is what turns the Jedi Council the way that they are now. So I think it is just this idea of, hey, we just need to be rule followers. We need to go by the book. We need to do this. As Adrian likes to say, we just need to be cops. Like that's just how the Jedi have turned out to be. Like as much as we may hate it in the sense of like, oh, we are looking from the outside in. We are getting to know all of the information. These characters don't know all of the information, and that's just how it goes.
Yep. And like especially like you said in the books, we're seeing how things pick up. I mean, we already saw it with kind of the introduction of the Guardian protocols.
Yes.
Between phase 1 and phase 3, like that's the Jedi High Council taking more control. And you see, like, we have Jedi who ignore it and everything, but as time goes on, those Jedi get less and less because the Jedi grew, the younglings and the Padawans grow up only knowing the stricter council, and so then follow that versus trying to go outside the rules.
Yeah. 100%. Now, the were you wanting to say something, Katie?
Yeah, but I lost it. So go ahead.
Well, going back to Chimera and Osha, the way that the episode ends is he reminds her of his helmet, Cortosis, confirming, hey, this is Cortosis, something that was taken from Legends. So again, gonna double back on what Adrian said last week. People are complaining that, you know, Disney Star Wars does not respect Legends and doesn't care about Legends and all of these cool things that they grew up and loved on. It's literally becoming canon and everybody's still complaining.
Leslie respects Legends a lot more than you people do.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah.
And Cortosis.
Go ahead.
Cortosis actually got its reintroduction into canon in John Jackson Miller's book. What is it called? It's his Rebels book.
Oh, the one with A
New Dawn.
A New Dawn. I almost said A New Hope. I was like, nope, that's the movie. A New Dawn. Yes, that's right. That it got put into there, and then this is its first live action appearance. Reminded of Cortosis, and with the helmet that he has, says, oh, this is just like how we had when we were being trained as Padawans. It is the sensory helmet. And she's like, oh, well, it cuts off all your senses. And he's like, yeah, so that way it's just you and the Force. And he's like, you should try it on. And she's like, I don't trust you. And he says, well, what does he say? Like, oh, you should trust yourself or something like that.
I think so.
Again, more and more keywords to loosen, you know, hey, just relax. You know, I'm not going to kill you. You're not going to kill me.
Be yourself. Like,
exactly
those kind of things.
And the episode ends with her observing the helmet, you know, kind of, you know, tracing the burn marks and everything that's on the helmet, and then eventually turns it on. And I love the camera work here.
Yeah.
This was cool. So everything goes black. You see the small little ice slits, and then it kind of like fades a little bit and it gets dimmer. Yeah. And this was so cool. I love the way that they filmed this because it's literally you in this helmet and you're starting to like lose all of your senses. The sound gets quieter, the vision gets dull, and everything else. And then it, of course, fades to credits. What do you think is going to happen? How do you feel about this ending? Any type of prediction that you feel towards Chimere and Oshamir, or whatever you guys want to call it.
Real quick, Jacob, we kind of talked about this at the beginning a little bit, but yes, I think we're both in agreement potentially that Vernestra was Chimere's Jedi Master, potentially. So with the end of the episode, I definitely think we're going to get more into like Chimere and Osha. I think he definitely wants her to pick up like and be his new acolyte in a sense. And that could be something very dangerous for the Jedi, having two people knowing like the ins and outs of the Jedi Order, but also just how they got left behind, kind of thing. I do like that we saw the cortosis like ore strip in the wall. I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, I definitely think we're going flashback territory. We're going to get the Brindock full story. We could potentially also get May telling Soul or Chimere telling Osha, hey, this is how I met May. And like training her and stuff.
So
Jacob
yes,
talks
Jacob
about
is talking. Okay, go ahead.
Vernestra being the true target of Chimere, and that he wants to cause enough damage to draw her out and get his revenge. I don't know about that because he specifically said he wanted to stay hidden in the last episode. Like, all these people have to die because they can't know of my existence. So that's the only thing there.
I did think about this in the middle of this conversation, once the idea came about that Vernestra might be his old master. I think it could possibly be like the death of Vernestra. Could be like Headland's like key point of this series.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like she is, of course, the legacy character coming from the books to the show. This is like her story, and I think it even was oh shoot, who's the actress playing Vernestra?
Rebecca something.
Yes.
Headland's wife.
Yes, Headland's wife. Was saying that like this is like Vernestra's like swan song or whatever. I forgot like the keywords that she had said, but like this might be the end of Vernestra's road. You know, the remind me again the species that she is.
Mary Allen.
Mary Allen. We know that they live for a long time, and she could live for another 150 to 50 years to be, you know, in the same era as the prequels, but she might not, you know?
Yeah.
And that might be because Chimere gets to her first.
Yep. I want to go back to the swim scene before we kind of close stuff out and kind of go ahead and talk about horny on May and Twitter at the same time. So Maggie asked Headland talking about that scene. She said, I love that scene because yes, it's unabashedly horny. You have a lot of bare flesh in Star Wars, which is so delightful, but that nudity then kind of brings a different layer to it because you're getting vulnerability, you're getting nothing to hide, all of these different themes. I'm curious, how far were you allowed to push things with how much skin was shown? And did you have to fight to be like, no, this is heavy symbolism, this is helping carry the story a lot? Headland said, Lucasfilm really believed in my vision. From a narrative perspective, it had to happen. It had to. He did like a Steven Seagal neck snap in the previous episode. How do you at all get from that to humanity? The only way to do that is to show him in such a wildly vulnerable position, and it has to be visual. I can't think of something more vulnerable than someone holding a lightsaber on someone who's that exposed. I just don't. I felt like he was so merciless in the previous episode that he had to stand in front of her and say, you absolutely can kill me. Essentially, I'm at your mercy. It couldn't feel like a put on. It had to feel like he genuinely was like, totally, you can do this. There's nobody around.
I get that. But not a whole lot was shown. Like, you know,
it's still Disney.
It is still Disney. But at the same time, it was calf down to his feet and then torso up. That's it. Like, it wasn't like half of an ass cheek or something, or
Correct.
like inner thigh. Like, it wasn't anything like that. So y'all need to calm down, people. Okay? Like, Jesus. Like,
it was seeing the dirty arms and like the sweaty hair. That was more of a turn on for me than this. Like because he's all clean already. Like, why you need another bath?
There is this. I do understand it there, because it was a little bit prolonged, right? This whole scene of him getting into the water. There was even like a establishing shot that, you know, took place to kind of show you how far the ocean was and everything else. Really love the cinematography in this episode.
Yeah, really great.
And then he goes so far out, and then when Osha comes in, that's when we finally get to see him like actually kind of expose his upper torso.
Mhm.
Dirty arms, sweaty hair, light whip. Oh my.
Hey, light whips are my jam. Okay. Y'all haven't heard me talk about light whips enough.
But with this, I do like the vulnerability, because Chimera is also very smooth about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, how does it feel? You know, just a casual conversation. Oh, yeah, you know, I'm assuming that. Yeah, I'm assuming that when you left the order, you didn't keep your lightsaber. So, like, how does it feel? Oh, you know, lift up your elbow a little bit more, for like giving her advice, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he does like, hey, if you're not going to, like, he is so smooth. If you're not going to join me, I might as well put my clothes on, you know.
And that's
like,
also the seductive part of the dark side. He's playing up the naivety of what he's doing to kind of lure her in and go, hey, you're safe with me. Like, don't worry about it. Like, and in doing that, he can kind of take her and train her. Like, we see that a lot. That's something that happened a lot in Legends, especially with Jason Solo and Tahiri in the back half of the back half of the New Jedi Order. So yeah.
Jacob
says, you laughing at Jacob?
Gotta flirt like an Amish man. Show me that ankle. Oh yeah. Oh man. No, but I like, there's, again, it's these small little subtle things also, which kind of like make me giggle and laugh a little bit the second time around. Because, like, yes, after seeing everybody horny on main, you know, seeing the scene again, I'm like, okay, yeah, you know, also not a whole lot of shown. But then immediately after, he goes inside and he like kind of like licks his fingers after dipping it into the food. I'm like, come on, guys, like, calm down. Like, I get it.
The whole enemies to lovers storyline. Like, I mean, we saw that with Raylo, like this, like,
and that's
and everything. Like, yeah,
I'm really interested, like, genuinely, because there's some people that are just like Jacob in the sense of seeing this for what it is, and it's like, okay, we know so much from Osha, we don't know hardly anything from Chimera. Like, what is going to be so valuable in Osha's eyes to be able to say, yes, I trust you, let's do this, show me this power and everything else. The journey to get there is what's going to make me like be like, oh wow, like, this is worth watching.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm really excited about.
Most definitely. And Headland admits it. She's like, Osha's not going to be convinced that Chimera's all of a sudden a good man and he had good intentions with killing all these people. Like, yeah. She's just not. There has to be another reason for their relationship to evolve from this point. So,
Yeah, and they even have that conversation like, oh, you killed my friends, you killed Jackie, you know, there was that, you know, everybody was shipping them,
Yep.
and he even says like, what was it gonna be? Like, was there even gonna be anything there as far
Yeah.
as like a relationship? Look at you and your master. Like, y'all didn't do anything. Like this, what he said? He said, you have to stop. Basically, he said, hey, you were so high above everybody else. Like, stop belittling yourself to be on their level, was basically what he was saying.
Yeah.
And again, it's this weird like compliment sandwich like conversations that he's having. And again, from the outside looking in, we're seeing these obvious like red flags. It's like, hey, like don't fall for this. These characters, again, they're under a lot of stress. They're under so many different circumstances. We have to see the full story through to see how this is going to really lay out for Osha. Again, there might be something in the story that he tells about how he first met May, or like why he is so against the Jedi, you know? We'll just have to see.
Yep. Definitely. So I definitely think we're getting a flashback next episode. But I think by the end of this, Soul's gonna have died. Whether it's next episode or whether it's the following episode. I think Soul's time is coming to an end. And we're gonna go into next season, hopefully, with May, Osha, definitely Chimere. And I would say Vernestra is going to make it out of this season. And next season would be where she could be at risk.
I'm going to agree. Now, we have been on a roller coaster of emotions with Soul. He had big father energy, you know, episode 1 and 2, caring for his old Padawan, maybe a red flag here and there, but we were kind of like, oh, but it can't be. He's like, you know, everybody's saying he's like Qui-Gon. He's like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon put together. Like he is like the soul of this show. And my only question is he going to die, and are we going to feel heartbroken or satisfied?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because again, we have seen that Jedi do not always make the right decision. My villain origin story, like we've all said, I have a personal vendetta against Yoda. Like me and Yoda have some words, but with Soul, we are seeing this spiral. And there's this idea that I keep seeing online that like he is clearly hiding something. And it's almost like the way that he was talking to May is like, this is going to come out eventually. I need to get ahead of this, and I will tell you myself, type of thing. So again, if he dies, if or when he dies in this season, is it going to be a moment where we're like, no? Or are we going to sit there and wallow in our own self-pity and saying, I can't believe I love that man? Like,
I think it's going to be the latter, unfortunately. I love Soul, and I love what Lee has done with the character, like I said at the beginning. And he may not be Qui-Gon, but he definitely took a lot from Qui-Gon. Jacob says Qui-Gon put a 9-year-old on the Star Wars equivalent of a Bobby Boucher lawnmower to win parts for a ship. Was that supposed to be Butcher?
Bobby Boucher.
I have no idea.
I think that might be Bobby Boucher from Waterboy. But
I've never seen Waterboy. That may be why I don't understand the reference.
But yeah, I think it might be the latter as well. Like because I think that would be such great storytelling. Like
Mhm.
Leslie has done a phenomenal job throughout this entire series.
Yep.
But to throw that in there, to purposely write somebody that she knows everybody will fall in love with, to literally make sure that everybody either hates him or is on the completely opposite side of the coin by the time his time is up.
Especially after Squid Game. Like, did you watch Squid Game?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Like, sometimes. But like especially after Squid Game. Like that's just like such like a huge parallel right there. I don't know. No, I've never seen Waterboy, Jacob.
Jacob, the thing is, Katie is very much like my own wife in the sense of like, if there was a movie made in the 90s, she hasn't seen it.
Except Star Wars and Jurassic Park.
Yeah. And it's no fault to them. It's just like Abby has this thing. It's like, oh, if it's older than me, I don't want to watch it type thing. It's really weird. But there's just some movies that are classics. Waterboy is one of, I think, any of
Georgie. Yeah, Georgie.
except for the Phantom Menace. Exactly. But yeah, like I am going to be very interested to see the ending of the story. There are still characters that were cast in this show that we have yet to see.
Where is David?
Season.
Tell me where David is.
Like people were saying, like, oh, he's giving off really like big bad energy. Like he might be, the master as far as the Sith goes and everything else.
Dude,
We'll
what
see.
if he's the fucking Chancellor? What if he's the Chancellor? And we see the Chancellor at the end?
I kind of think he might be. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the auditor.
Like that. I can see that.
Like,
I need him to be like more main character energy. Like he's just so good. Like,
Georgie is saying whether he is Plagueis or not. If he is Plagueis, I will lose it. I think that he has the acting chops to definitely put out that type of energy. I'm just curious, like, because I had completely forgotten about him as far as the cast until people started bringing attention to it at the end of last episode. So we will see. We will definitely see.
Because everybody was like, what if he's the stranger? And at first, when you look at especially if you're watching these at like 2 a.m. in the morning, you lose track of like skin color and everything. So when the arms came out in his from the stranger, I was like, oh, that's David Harewood's arm. And then I looked at it again and I was like, no, that's not David.
Nope, that's a lighter skin tone. And Jacob, we said that Plagueis is a Mun in Legends. Technically, he has not been put into canon as far as physical form or species or anything. So it would be a nice nod to make him a Mun, but he does not need to be one.
Plus, there's always makeup and CGI.
So. Yeah, that is also true. But yeah, I think we made it to the end. This is it. Unless you have any last.
He was a member of the banking clan in Legends.
Yeah. We had a small conversation about that earlier. Is there any last comments about the episode at all?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, guys, of course, you can always find me at FanboyClay on Twitter and any and all social medias. Me and Joe just recently recorded a episode of Ranger Alliance this past week. So go check that out. Of course, me and fellow friend of the show, Chris, over here at Star Wars Alliance, we reviewed Temptations of the Force. That is still up on our Star Wars Alliance feed on our podcast. So go check that out as well. It has been long since the release of that, so you guys can definitely go back and listen to that review. It was very, very fun. And actually, thinking about it, what is the next book that we have on the lineup? Should be.
I want to say it's going to be I want to say what's coming up next is the next High Republic. So we've got the middle grade novel at the end of August.
Yes,
and then
that's right.
The young adult in September. And then from there it will be the Mace Windu book.
That's right. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
But yeah, be on the lookout for our next book review, I guess.
And we'll obviously, with Acolyte coming to an end, Clay and I have to talk about what's next.
Yes.
What we'll do for the show afterwards. So we'll probably hit some Legends books and probably a canon book, since we were going to do some canon books this spring and then they didn't happen. So we'll talk about it. We'll get back to you guys though. So
yes, of course. But Katie, where can the lovely listeners find you?
Y'all, you can find me on most social media platforms. It is at Slice of Katie. This show you can find on Twitter. It is at Star Wars Alliance with the 8, and the war is very important. Don't forget it. Remember, you can always email us at that same username at gmail.com or send us a text 830-538-4828. Remember to leave us a name so we just know how to reference you. But with that, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever time of day you are listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the Force be with you.